What are your thoughts on the Stanley Cup as a whole in terms of how this series played out, and what do you think is next for the Lightning?
Well, I got to give Colorado their props and I got to give them respect because they were just the better team from beginning to end in this series. When I looked at the first two games that took place in Denver, it just seemed like Colorado had their skates underneath them, and it seemed like Tampa really struggled to go toe to toe with them in those first two road games. Maybe it was a factor of Colorado had over a week off before the first Stanley Cup game after they swept the Oilers in the Western Conference Finals. And the Lightning had to travel to Denver, where you're playing up at 5,000 feet. They were only playing on 3 days rest after they beat the Rangers in 6 games in the Eastern Conference Finals. It just seemed like Colorado was just a faster team. They made their plays a lot more effectively than what the Lightning were able to do, even though the game one was relatively close. In game two, Colorado put up a touchdown. They put up a touchdown and an extra point. And it seemed like even if the Lightning were to make this a series, it was really going to be an uphill battle for them to really get into the series and potentially take advantage of it. I mean, the Lightnings, they saved face in game three. They definitely showed that they could go against Colorado and really score at will against them. But Colorado, to their credit, they went on the road game four and they were able to get a great overtime winner to push that to a 3-1 series lead. And I'm going to be honest with you. When I was looking at game five specifically, I thought the series was wrap. I thought that Colorado would waltz right back into their home ice and just throttle the Lightning. I thought that they would have won somewhere along the lines of like 4-2, just because Colorado has been scoring at will, not just in the Stanley Cup, but throughout the entire postseason. Scoring has not been that big of a deal for them just because they've been able to score so effectively, no matter who they played so far. But give Tampa credit. Tampa showed some resolve in game five. They were able to get on the board relatively quickly, and it was a back and forth game. Colorado definitely made it an interesting one, but Andre Palat gets the go ahead goal with about 5 minutes left in the third period. And, Tampa leaves Denver in game five with a win. And I'm of the mindset going into game six, Tampa's on home ice. They've got the momentum on their side. I was in the mindset that the Lightning were going to be able to win game six to force this series to a game seven. And early on, looking back at this game six, the Lightning got off to a very good start. The Avalanche had a turnover in their own zone, I should say, really deep in their own zone, and Stamkos was able to uh, put it 5-hole underneath Colorado's goalie. They're up 1-0 within the first 4 minutes of the game, and I'm thinking momentum's just on their side. But give Colorado credit. Colorado was persistent the entire second and third period. And really, the second period is where they blew the doors off against Tampa. They were able to get a great one timer from Nathan McKinnon that tied the game. And then when you look at the second goal that they scored, I'm trying to remember if I got the name right. I think it was Lakeinen who got the go ahead goal with a couple minutes left in the second period. And it was just their overall pace that really disrupted Tampa's rhythm, because outside of that first period by Tampa, Colorado pretty much owned the rest of the game. So like you look at the 2/3 of the game, Colorado was just playing phenomenal hockey, and it really showed with Tampa's ineffectiveness to even get shots on goal in the second and third period. There were large stretches where Tampa just couldn't get any good looks. And in the third period, with them down 2-1, they're on their home ice. They're trying to just try to save face at that point. Colorado's defense was stifling. If I remember the amount of shots that Tampa scored the amount of shots that Tampa got in the third period, it was somewhere only around like 3 or 4 shots. I mean, Tampa had some good looks that they could have taken advantage of, but overall, just Darcy Kemper was solid in this game six win for the Avalanche. I thought overall, um, the Avalanche's defensive lines came up really stout here later in the game. And to me, that was a difference maker. And when I look at this series, it's like I said at the top, the Avalanche showed me that they have been the better team so far throughout this series. And they proved it in the biggest game possible with them winning the Stanley Cup. So I got to give the Avalanche all the credit. in the world for them, stopping a three-peat, a potential three-peat with the Lightning. And, when I look at Tampa, it was a valiant effort. I think the fact that they were able to get this one to 6 games, I think that was a good mark of their resolve, even though that they struggled mightily throughout this series in certain points. To be able to force us to a game 6, I thought it gave them a good shot to potentially send this one to a game 7. But they just they just couldn't match what Colorado was presenting them, despite the fact that Steven Stamkos, Andre Palat, Victor Hedman, Nikita Kucherov, all these guys have been just phenomenal throughout this playoff run for Tampa. It's just overall their defense is what let them down. They gave up way too many scoring opportunities for the Avalanche to take advantage of, and to me, that was a difference maker. At least if Tampa's defense saved face, they could have made this a really close series, made this possibly 7 games. But Colorado's offense was just firing on all cylinders throughout this series, as far as I'm concerned. And it really just put Tampa's defense in a bind, not just in game 6 specifically, but throughout the entire series. Really, Tampa's defense was just not solid through large stretches of this series. But look, Tampa, I mean, they went to 3 straight Stanley Cups. I mean, that's an impressive feat, and they were just a couple games away from potentially getting a three-peat. So I'm not going to say that the Lightning are going to be just dead in the water after this series. I think they have the pieces to retool and possibly get back to another Stanley Cup next season. I think they showed a lot of resolve, especially early on in the playoffs where they were struggling against teams like Toronto. New York gave them a really good run in the Eastern Conference Finals, but despite that, Tampa was going toe to toe with these teams. It's just they finally went up against a team that just presented them too big of a challenge to overcome. But I don't think this is the end all be all for the Lightning. I could totally see this team getting it back together for next season and possibly gearing up for another Stanley Cup run. So, congratulations to the Avalanche for getting a Stanley Cup. It's their first one in 2 decades. And as far as the Lightning are concerned, I think they just got to make some small adjustments here, and I think they could be right back in the mix for another Stanley Cup run next year. That's just how I see it.